Well, I was here in 1955 when the Torn Torridge Festival, it didn't last very many years, but it was very exciting at the time. We had some good people on board, like Benjamin Britten and Peter Pearce and the Earl of Harwood and Ronald Duncan, who lived locally anyway, but was a bit of an eccentric, I gather. And they obviously had the notion that they would invite the Theatre Workshop Company from London to do a couple of plays. And Theatre Workshop were a pretty avant-garde company in those days, very left-wing. Bertolt Brecht, pretty left-wing to start with. And Joan Littlewood, who ran it, was quite a character. She and her partner, I suppose, is the word we use these days. Jerry Raffles was the manager of the Theatre Workshop Company in Stratford East in London. And they did a Shakespeare play down here. I think it was Richard II. And they did Mother Courage, which was the first time a Bertolt Brecht play had ever been produced in the UK. Amazingly, in English, of course. So I was here. I would have been 20, I suppose, 1955, and I was very impressed. And a friend of mine who wanted to become an actor, who came from a very deprived background anyway, I recommended that he go to Theatre Workshop, which he did. And he actually spent a year there, unpaid, as a so-called student. And they took on a girl at the same time. So she became Jerry Raffles' unpaid secretary, and Bill became Joan Littlewood's unpaid assistant. So he had the better bet because he sat beside her taking notes and all the rest of it. And she used him a couple of times on stage. Murray Melvin was the lead in a play of William Soroyan that they did called Sam, the Highest Jumper of Them All. My God, my memory's not bad. And he appeared in that. So when we had this little ceremony 50 years later here at the Queen's Theatre, we got Murray Melvin to come down and cut a little ribbon. And the two posters that several years later, my friend Bill and myself were in Berlin, and so we went to the Berliner Ensemble, which was quite tricky in those days because it was a divided city and we had to go across the border and all the rest of it. But we had a German student friend who knew the ropes. And because Bill had been at Theatre Workshop and knew Joan Littlewood, we had a sort of entree. I didn't, but he did. It was even more peculiar actually because there was a black theatre company in Berlin at the time performing a play by Jean Genet called The Blacks. And somehow or another, they may have been in the same hotel, or I don't know. We got to know them, and they'd been at Theatre Workshop on a tour, I suppose. So they said, oh, we're going across to Berliner Ensemble tomorrow, why don't you come with us? So we said, oh, that would be nice, yeah, sure. So we all met and got on this coach. And of course, that was easy to get across the border then. But we went through a lot of subterranean passages below the theatre, a bit like the National Theatre now in London, where I have also been, and we came up on stage, and the whole of the Berliner Ensemble company was sitting in the auditorium applauding this black theatre company, and two wretched white boys at the back who had no business to be there at all. Anyway, Brecht was dead by this time, but his wife, whose name I'm struggling to remember, ran the company still at that time. And what is her name? She was the first Mother Courage. She performed Mother Courage on stage and on film, actually. And so we met her, and we found we were sitting at a table at a canteen with her, and she signed a beer mat for us, which has since been lost, sadly. But anyway, we did pick up a couple of posters, which are now, I presented to the theatre here 50 years later. And in fact, one of them fell down earlier this year, I believe. Oh, really? And the frame broke, apparently. That was weird. Anyway, Alan had it in his office for some time and said he was getting used to it. So I threatened him. It had to go back up. And the last time I was here, I had a look, and they got a very nice bust of John Gay, which sort of completes the circle. Because the interesting thing is that Barnstable's only other claim, well, I was going to say theatrical fame, but any claim actually, is that John Gay was born here. And of course Bertolt Brecht updated the Beggar's Opera and turned it into the Threepenny Opera. So there's another link between John Gay and Bertolt Brecht. And Barnstable comes in on both stories. Isn't that weird? It's a strange story. And now I see, to celebrate the, was it 60th birthday? Of the Queen's Theatre. Alan was telling me the story. They managed to persuade this very good modern company, again, I'm sure they'd be familiar with the name Joan Little in Theatre Workshop. I don't know where they're based, but they're going to do what looks like a very modern take on Mother Courage once again. So this is really extraordinary for me. And I will definitely, well, in fact, I've just been given 2 complimentary tickets, which is extremely generous. So I shall definitely be here on Saturday, the 1st of December.